Hey, everybody. I wanted to get on here and just say hi and talk to you for a few minutes about Shanann's relationship with Chris Watts. And a couple things that really came forward to me that I wanted to share with all of you. And part of it is that the other day when I read just the beginnings of Tammy's notes from the interview with Chris Watts, the first, I want to say, let me look at this, the first 11 pages, you start to get a real sense of this guy being very affable, very honest. Now, I'm not saying he is. Please don't, please just don't start getting into all that. I want you to hear me out, okay? When you're listening to it, he's very charming, he's very likable. And for me, it kind of opened a window into how Shanann saw him as a very, in many ways, honest. Now, we know he's not. We know he's lied and all that. But I'm saying that if I look at it from Shanann's point of view, that they had these talks where she would say things and he would then respond with honesty. Look at how he's talking to the detective and the CBI and the FBI guy. They're just chatting and he's telling them, now, here's the thing. Obviously, I'm going to get into the crime stuff and it's disgusting. But I think as a stand for Shanann, one of the things that, and her family as well, a couple things that you want to pay attention to is there's a reason this family took this young man in. And, even in his conversation, Chris' conversation from the February 18th conversation, there's a moment when he's talking about his former father-in-law, Frank, and he's saying Frank really liked the fact that I jumped out and helped with Shanann's car, because Frank was saying that no other boyfriend of hers ever did that. I'd always have to do it. So there was a definite camaraderie with that family and Chris. And I want to say that this is a huge loss on a lot of levels. And so what I want to say in Shanann's family, to be a little bit, even more than a little bit thoughtful about the fact that, yes, he annihilated his family and it's horrifying. And at the same time, someone they really trusted and cared about was this monster that did this to their daughter and their grandchildren. So as I say that to you, I really mean it as Shanann saw this guy who was willing to help out. He did laundry. He helped with the kids. He mowed the lawn. There were a lot of things that he contributed to helping in the relationship. And I can see this with some friends of mine who are, women who have these heavy duty careers and they date wonderful guys who have a trade. I'm thinking of one friend of mine. I remember her saying when she first met this guy, she said to me, Tori, he does this, and she was an executive. And I said, honey, he loves you. You love him. And she was like, I know, but should I? Well, they've been together for 13 years and it's great. The point I'm making is that we can't know what people are contributing to each other. The thing that we can know is that Chris was consistently lying to himself energetically. He really did want to get away from his family. And if we look at it that way, he looked at Shanann as the savior to get him away. Now, we can look at it from the other point of view and recognize that his mother and his father were, he left the house at 18. Let's start there, right? So when you leave the house at 18 and you don't go back, generally it's because you're moving forward in your life. And I think that Chris really wanted to marry somebody that was really wonderful. And he did. I think the big issue for Chris is that I don't know that he was really capable of having feelings that were, I want to say, that were expressed in a loving way. And I know that there are going to be a lot of experts out there who say that's because he's a sociopath, he's bipolar, he's this, he's that, he's narcissistic. Whatever terms you're going to use, that's totally fine. I want to just talk about it like peoples, you know? And here's this situation between these two people where I think Shanann wanted to build him up bigger than he wanted to be. And when we look at it that way, he just wasn't capable of it. And sometimes pushing people past their capability, just, it implodes. And when we look at it that way too, let's go and look at his relationship with Kessinger. And I'm going to start to, the reason I want to share some of this with you, these are Tammy's notes. These are not word for word what we heard in the 5.5 hour recording. And the thing about that recording is that I got really sick from it because Chris Watts energetically reels you in. And over time, if you have any sense of empathic feeling, you'll get sick. And I say that because all of a sudden I got swollen glands, I had a sore throat, I wasn't feeling well, and I said, what's this about? And you know, energetically, colds and head colds are confusion. So when we look at it that way, I can kind of go, wow, this is a very confusing case, very confusing circumstances. And the way he just talks about his wife and children as though he just, oh yeah, I had to go and dump this over there, and then I did this, and it was just like, huh? So what I want to say is we're going to pick up here with part 2, and the reason, the second third of this, the reason I'm saying this is because in part 1, as an empath, I found him to be very likable, very affable, very charming, and a lot of people gave me shite for that, and I were like, how can you feel that way? And it's like, well, because I do. All right. So here's the thing. Shaming someone for how they feel does not encourage them to tell you the truth. So one of the things that I think has happened is we've gotten into this kind of rhythm of lying to each other because it's easier to just say, oh, I did this, or, you know, a number of years ago, and this is not about America, oh, thank God, but a friend of mine in Europe, and I was over there, I forget when, but it was something about the Conservative Party had won. And I don't know British politics, okay? But one of the best moments for me was my editor, who is very, I want to say, liberal. She was very upset. She was like, I can't believe they won. And she said, I can't believe this happened. And I said, what can't you believe? And she said, well, the polls were saying that, you know, the Liberal Party was going to win. And I said, people lie. And she looked at me and I said, everybody's lying. Because if they tell you, yeah, I voted Conservative, you're going to call them names. And sure enough, that's the thing, is that we've gotten to such a point where we can't really speak our true feelings. And I started to feel that way. You know, when I've been saying to people, say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. And for someone to say to me on the feed, I think it was a couple days ago, how can you feel that way? Well, let's see. I do. You know, it's like, that doesn't mean that by my saying he sounded likable on a recording, that he's a likable guy. But what happens, and we have to really look at what we're doing with this twisty, right? We're twisty. And we twist it so you're saying this and therefore, and really what happens then, it gives somebody else a leg up to kind of pontificate and give their big lecture about how awful this guy is, how he's a monster, how he's this. And I absolutely understand that. I am not saying that what he did was in any way, gosh, he's so likable. I don't mean it like that. And most people get that. But the small percentage who kind of want to take it and twist it to mean something else, not cool. And I'm going to tell you something else that's not cool. If you start saying, you know, well, Shanann wasn't perfect, it's like, you know what, don't go there. And the reason I'm saying don't go there is because It doesn't matter. We're trying to look at this from a deeper perspective. This is unlike any criminal we've ever seen. And I'm saying this because, you know, even when we watched Ted Bundy, okay, Ted Bundy was like very friendly and affable, but there was an evil in that man that I could look and go, ooh, you know. I didn't start to feel that about Chris Watts until I started to hear him talk on the second third of the recording. So I want to say that the thing that began to happen in the second third is I feel like it's almost like the Band-Aid was ripped off. You know, something is opening where we're beginning to see some of the way that Chris Watts is put together like plaster of Paris, guys. It was like wet and slopped on. He just is not going to make a lot of sense. But remember, he had a lot of charm. He did a lot of nice things for Shanann. And this was his role. He wanted to be a great dad, a great husband, and he was. And the thing that I want to say, until he wasn't, right? But the thing I want to say is that what's really scary is how he begins to throw everybody else under the bus, particularly the women in his life. And I want you to notice that he really kind of twists and begins to turn this part of the interrogation. Okay, so we're on the part where he has taken Shanann and the children to I'm on page 12 of of Tammy's notes, okay? And this is the part where people asked about the rake having broken. And he says he does not believe he ever thought about going back for the broken part of the rake. If you remember, the rake that he was using broke and he just left it there. And so people were saying, but he left it there. Was he trying to create the gravestone? He dug a hole with his shovel and put Shanann inside. Shanann was not bleeding or cut when he buried her. He recalled Shanann's eyes were bloodshot. Shanann had not partially given birth when he buried her in the ground. Shanann was wearing a shirt and blue-colored underwear. Every time Chris Watts, closes his eyes, he hears Bella say, "Daddy, no." He hears it every day. Just thinking about the oil tank makes him want to throw up. Frank Rushek said at the sentencing he was trying to separate everyone, and that was not true. He felt like someone else was in control of what he was doing. See, this is something I want to say right here. Someone else was in control of what he was doing. I think it's like that level of rage and anger, and I think it borders on, you know, I know a lot of people are going, oh, demonic possession. And, you know, if anything, this seems like it because it's almost like something slithered out and then it's back in. But I want you to continue with me and bear with me on this. He did not consider the fact that it may have helped with detection by putting the girls in separate oil tanks. He didn't consider putting the girls with Shanann because everything happened so fast and, quote, I had no time to really have a thought that was my own, unquote. Whose thought was it? He didn't purposely try to separate any of them. With regard to the trash bags found at the oil site, he didn't want his girls looking at Shanann in the back seat of his truck, so he placed one trash bag on her feet and the other around her head. The girls didn't know what was going on. After the murders, the Yankees blanket was still in his truck and he threw it away. He stopped by a construction dumpster in his neighborhood and threw away his clothes and the Yankees blanket on his way home from work on Monday. So that's when he's going back and the police are at his place already. He keeps extra boots and clothes in his work truck, which he changed into after the murders. He felt like taking Celeste and Bella's lives was caused by an anger with Shanann that he took out on everyone in front of him that morning. He had never been angry before, quote, and this was like the epitome of being angry, end quote. He had rage and lost his mind. He was angry with Shanann over separating him from his family. Now, this is way back to the wedding. When he and Shanann got married, he told his family he didn't need them anymore because he had Shanann. He cussed his mother out and did things to his family he never thought he would do. He is not sure if Shanann, quote, coached him or not, referring to how Watts treated his family. He was angry since July 2018 when Shanann told him his parents would never see their granddaughters again. I don't know if that had something to do with it, that something inside me just triggered it. And then it was just like all that pent up from the wedding and everything. It's like a long fuse that finally just went to its end. End quote. Just take that in for a minute, that this had been a rage and anger by this little boy because mommy and daddy didn't come to his wedding, and he was punished by his mother for marrying this woman. So it really just shows you that he was on this leash from his parents that he never really unhooked at all. Okay. His mother and Shanann never got along after he proposed, 2012. His mother and Shanann never agreed on anything. His mother possibly thought Shanann wasn't good enough. His mother always thought Shanann was hiding something from her past from him. Now, see, I think that's very interesting because she says that like repeatedly, even to the family, that Shanann has some kind of thing in the closet or some kind of, secret. Well, the truth of the matter is that whenever we like project like that, it makes me wonder what kind of secret she has in that family, or what kind of secret her son had. Did he have some kind of childhood cuckoo thing happen? I mean, we don't know, but I'm thinking that she's so busy trying to say something in her past. I wonder if it's something in either her daughter's past or her past. Because when it's kind of like the guy that's always wondering if you're cheating, it's because they're cheating, So I wonder, the mother continually says there's something shady about Shanann. I wonder what's shady about Chris's mother, sister, or Chris's family in some way. It's just a projection thought. Let's see. Okay. His mother and sister didn't like Shanann and felt like Shanann took him away from them and moved him out to Colorado. His grandmother, as we know, was the only one who came to his wedding. He danced with his grandmother and his friend's mother during the groom's dance at the wedding. He would never have thought his marriage and relationship to Shanann was bad if he hadn't met Kessinger. See, that puzzles me because it wasn't, and I think it's kind of like, how could it be bad, Chris? That's what it is. If you're in that day-to-day thing, it's a very interesting point. I'm going to pause this for a second, grab some water, and I'll be right back. Okay, going on. Chris looks outside every day and wonders what he could have been doing with his kids. Right now, this is a quote from him. Right now, I'd have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and more than likely a 1-month-old son and a beautiful wife. And right now, it's just me. End quote. With regard to finding out Shanann was pregnant with Nico. Shanann was pregnant with Nico within 2 weeks of trying. He was surprised and scared when he found out Shanann was pregnant. He may have not looked excited about the pregnancy because he may have felt guilty about talking to Kessinger at work. There were never any incidents of domestic violence between he and Shanann during their relationship. Shanann was the dominant person who always took control of everything. He always just went with the flow and always wanted to be in the back row. He never felt belittled by Shanann. See, that's important because, in a sense, he never felt belittled by her. But if you think about it, being in the back row was his choice, but with Kessinger, he wasn't in the back row. So it happens where he chose that back row. So it's kind of an interesting thing. He was the introvert and Shanann took control of most situations. he hated being in videos. Remember, a lot of us have commented on that. But he went along with it because it was for Shanann's business. He couldn't tell Shanann he didn't want to be in the videos because it would have made her mad. Now, that's an interesting thing, right? Because when you're in a relationship with somebody and you start hiding who you are, it kind of like, at first it's just like a little teeny piece. And then all of a sudden it's another piece and another piece. And pretty soon you've got like 5 bricks. And then after time, it's a wall. Because if you're going to be afraid of risking making someone mad, then you're not really in an authentic situation, are you? So, you know, to be able to, had he said that to her, she might have seen problems sooner. And I want to explain that for a minute. You know, if he said to her, listen, you know what, babe, I know you like doing these videos, but I just hate it and I can't do it. And please, please, please stop putting me in them. They're not my thing. I just don't want to do it. I think initially Shanann may have been like, I need you for this, blah, blah, blah. And he put, you know, if he said, look, I don't want to do it. I feel like a jerk. You know, I think she would have acquiesced. And here's the thing. Had he removed himself and had she allowed him to, I'm saying aloud, had she allowed him to remove himself from those videos, and we see that separation had taken place, I think one of the things that we might have noticed in that is that she would have had a distance from him being plugged into her livelihood. Because I do think that was a big part of what she wasn't saying. She had a lot to keep up in the fact that her Thrive business was built on the health she had, the health she had, her husband had, all of that relationship she had used as part of her, I want to say her branding, really. So what would she have done if she had to remove that branding? If she had to remove her husband from it, you know, most of us would go, oh, you know, I've reinvented my life 100 times. So I think it's one of those things where it's very difficult for people to do. So I really want to point that out, that's a thing that, yes, she would have been angry. But I think if he had put his foot down, if he was capable of it, ultimately it might have saved her life. Because you see, once you get that distance, like if that guy is not involved in my work, then I have a distance to say, well, I don't have to stay in an abusive situation. I think she saw the signs. I don't think she wanted to see them because she was pregnant. You know, there was a lot going on with her in that moment. So had she just separated her business from him, it may look really bad. And she didn't kind of put together knowing how to do it. Plus, he was like kind of dive bombing her with like, push me, pull you stuff, you know, I love you, but go away, you know, and that kind of stuff that was going on was very difficult. So this is really a turning point, everybody. If you are in a relationship where you feel that the other person's going to get angry if you tell them you don't want to do something, then it becomes even more important that you speak up, because that is a turning point. It's a hiding thing. You start to hide who you are. And of course, he didn't have to hide who he was around NK. Now, I'm going to talk about her a little more, just in the sense that I have a feeling that this woman is a lot more emotionally troubled than any of us saw. And I want to kind of talk about that separately. But I think what we're looking at here is that Shanann was pretty emotionally, in some ways, a lot more healthy. And I think he was in a much more healthy circumstance with Shanann. Now you have NK over here, who was a little bit off the wall. If you go to the day, and I don't know if some of you caught this, if you listen to the full recording, on July 4th, Shanann had tried to call Chris 10 times, but he had stayed at NK's house. So he goes outside to take the call to talk to Shanann. And when he comes back in, NK is like, well, I'm going to go to this thing and I don't need you to come over tonight then. And she's very much in an upset about, quote, being abandoned, that's my word, by him even talking to his wife. Now, that right away begins to say, and he's like, oh, okay, well then I'll just stay home tonight. And of course she called him later and said, please come back. So you see, this weak-minded guy is caught up in this web of unhealthy. Now, why is he caught up in unhealthy? Because it's pulling out the parts of him. It mirrors his lack of health. And you see, when unhealthy meets unhealthy, it can be very unhealthy. Okay, let's go on. All right. So he couldn't tell Shanann he didn't want to be in the videos because it would have made her mad. Shanann was a good salesperson and could have sold everything. I love this line though. He said, Shanann could have sold everything we were wearing back to us without even thinking about it. And I love that because it's like such a great line. He hated being out there for everyone to see and was against doing their gender reveal on Facebook. So, you know, we're also looking at a guy who was kind of like in his own little world, right? With regards to what Watts planned to do about his, quote, missing family, he had no idea what he was going to do. He didn't understand how he was able to act normal around his coworkers. His plan was not well thought out and not a Criminal Minds type of thing. Well, we know that. I mean, you don't need to be a beta, theta, data, whatever to know that this was like not a mastermind criminal, you know? Okay. All right. With regard to how Watts felt when he wore Thrive patches, and see, I'm beginning to wonder about Thrive. And I know a couple people have alluded to it, but I'm wondering too, because when he put on the Duo Burn patches, his Apple Watch would show he was exercising all day because of his increased heart rate. When he wore the Duo Burn patches, it felt like he was working out all day. Kessinger told him he would sometimes fall asleep on her couch in the middle of a conversation and then would wake up and finish what he was saying. Watts indicated it may have been related to insomnia. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep either if I was doing what you were doing. He felt different on the Duo Burn patches than when he wore other Thrive patches. Duo Burn patches made him feel like he could go longer and longer each day. He only slept approximately 3 hours each night. See, I want to say something about this. It's like we live in this world where it's better living through chemistry, right? And I think to a degree, there are people that really need it. It has really saved their lives. And I'm all for, you know, medication that helps people. I really am. But I believe that sometimes we look at these supplements and it's kind of like, and now you can be 20 pounds lighter. First lose 20 pounds and then take these supplements. And it's like, you know, and the truth is our bodies are all different. And I think this day and age, you know, there's got to be some kind of like, no, these supplements might be dangerous. And I'm really kind of getting a little bit of that vibe here around this hyped up, you know, it's almost like a meth addict who doesn't know what they're doing. I'm not saying he didn't know what he was doing. Okay, hold on. I'm not saying he's not guilty. Okay, looking back, he realized God gave him plenty of opportunities for him to, quote, get out, referring to getting out of his relationship with Kessinger. His friend Jeremy Lindstrom asked him to go to a Broncos game with him on Saturday, August 11th evening, and he said no. He should have gone with Lindstrom and told Kessinger he couldn't find a babysitter. Being away from Kessinger might have caused a light switch to go off on in his head. If he had gone to the Broncos game, it may have put him on a different trajectory. So something was turning, and there was something that, and we know he wants to be in the background. This guy can't handle pressure. I mean, he married a woman who took all the pressure off him. I mean, if you really think about it. And now he was thrown into a situation with a woman who wanted what she wanted and was putting pressure back on him. And we can only look at, you know, the protection he had in his family of origin, the kind of controlled environment. And then he gets out and he meets this woman, Shanann, who's perfect. He can cater to her every need. He's this guy that has a purpose in that. And suddenly he's freed by Kessinger. He's like the freaky flag is flying. Okay. He is just wildly crazy because she's wildly crazy, and it's pulling him out of what he knows is a better thing for him. And yeah, okay. All right. He wished now that he and Shanann only went to North Carolina for a week, and Shanann hadn't gone for 5 weeks straight. Now, I want to say something about that. You know, it's so easy to be that Monday morning quarterback. It really is, to say, you know, she shouldn't have gone for 5 weeks. But there was rumblings that she was going for 5 weeks, not only to spend time with her parents, but to kind of get some time away from Chris. I think what he's not telling us is that Shanann may have been like, you know, not wanting him to dull her shine. She probably had some sense that something was going on, and she was trying to kind of put the relationship back together by them having a boy. But we also know that this was extremely dangerous for Shanann in her health situation. Okay, when the incident with Celeste and the nut allergy occurred at his parents', quote, which he referred to as Nutt Gate, he should have stopped everything with Kessinger and concentrated on fixing the relationship with Shanann and his family. See, this tells me Chris does know right from wrong. He does. So Shanann and his parents got into a serious argument over the nut incident, and his nephew told Bella to hide behind the curtain because he didn't want her mom, Shanann, he didn't think her mom, Shanann, would ever let her come back again. Celeste celebrated her birthday in North Carolina a few days later, after July 17th, and his parents did not attend after Shanann made a post on Facebook about allergies. So it must have been something about the party of please don't bring these things or something. Shanann said the post wasn't directed at anyone in particular, but Shanann, quote, had a method to the madness, end quote. Shanann was convinced Watt's mother tried to kill their daughter by putting nuts in front of Celeste. His mother felt like Celeste's allergy was not serious. And see, I think this is kind of like the idea of undermining anybody else's ideas, and particularly somebody who was as strong as Shanann. His mother really didn't think she was good for Chris. And I wonder, you know, I kind of look back on that and say, well, you know, what did you want for your son? Because it certainly hadn't presented itself up to his 25th birthday until he met Shanann. So it's a very odd thing what his mother was doing. After the incident with the nut allergy and Celeste, he didn't speak to his parents until August 6th. His parents said they weren't sure they could ever forgive Shanann. His parents asked him if he had someone else because they saw him, Watts, texting someone, Kessinger, the entire time he was at their house in North Carolina. Shanann told him, Watts, he wasn't allowed to call or talk to his folks. His dad was his hero, and he felt like he lost him because he wasn't able to talk to him for 3 weeks. I don't know. You know, I honestly think Frank and Sandy and Frankie would know better what was going on when he was visiting, because when Chris was visiting, because I don't think any of us would really know that they would. So his father took the entire week off when they were in North Carolina, but Shanann booked them for 5 days at the beach instead. With regard to what Watts and Kessinger talked about regarding their future together, Kessinger told him she would help him find an affordable apartment around Brighton or Fort Lupton. Kessinger did not want him to move in with her. It would have been too soon to move in with Kessinger because they'd only dated for about a month. Kessinger's apartment was her shield or her safe place and was the reason she never liked people to come over. Kessinger let him come over because her dog liked him and she felt like he belonged there. Shanann always checked his cell phone, so he communicated with Kessinger on his work phone. He used a secret calculator app on his personal cell phone to store he and Kessinger's pictures. I do want to say one thing about that, it was NK that told him about that app. That was my understanding. If I'm wrong, just tell me. But in listening, I think that's what I remember hearing. Okay. He deleted, this was my suspicion all along, and I think I said it in an earlier video. He deleted his Facebook account on August 8th, 2018, after Kessinger told him she told her friends about him. He was afraid Kessinger's friends would try to look him up on Facebook and would see his wife was pregnant. See, this is what gets me, and I know a lot of you have said this. I think Kessinger knew his wife was pregnant. How could she not know? The thing, I think now he's telling a different version. Remember that when he was in the original interrogation, he said he was afraid to tell her things because he was afraid Kessinger would leave him. So this guy, he's kind of wavering, and I think the story's kind of getting, a little bit muddied. And I think for those of you that say, who believes him, he's lying, the problem with liars is that some of their lies are based on truths. So some of them seem like, you have to put your facts together based on seeing through the lie, and that's not always easy. So, okay. With regard to he and Kessinger, if they fought, they never fought, but he had to calm Kessinger down a few times. Now notice he never said that about Shanann. Kessinger got upset when she realized she would always be the other person, and he, Watts, would always put his wife first. Okay. Okay. The first incident where Kessinger realized he put his wife first was when he left her house on July 4th. He told Kessinger just because he had to leave didn't mean she needed to take a step back. Kessinger told him she thought it was better if they didn't see each other the rest of the day, July 4th. Remember I told you that. Kessinger ended up asking him to come over after she returned from a baseball game, and he went to her house. Kessinger set up a couple of dates on her eHarmony app, and the men never showed up. He didn't know Kessinger was dating other people until a few weeks later. Kessinger thought he was different because he would fix things around her apartment for her, which no one had ever done for her in the past. Kessinger's friend, Jim, was her friend for a long time and worked in the oil field. Okay. Let's see, I just want to... Okay. I'm going to go through the top of page 18. We're on 17, we're halfway through, and then I'm going to just talk about it for a minute and wrap up. Okay, so, with regard to the selling of his and Shanann's home, around the first week of August 2018, Shanann sent an email to Ann Meadows about selling their house. Meadows recommended they get pre-approved for another house before they sold their house. He and Shanann talked about buying a home in Brighton, Colorado, so they could stay in the Adams 12 school district. Really, Adam 12? Okay. You'd have to be a certain age to come. Okay. He and Shanann had a lot of stress during their marriage, which included Shanann's parents living with them for 16 months and not having much time alone. He never thought he and Shanann would have to file for bankruptcy. Most of the bankruptcy dealt with credit card debt from their wedding. Okay. They also had a lot of doctor bills from the girls always being sick. They were behind on their mortgage payments. Shanann had been sending the checks for their HOA payment to the wrong address for an entire year. He didn't have access to their bank account on his cell phone and never asked Shanann to see their account. Ever since he sold his four-wheeler for less than he paid on it, Shanann wouldn't let him do anything with their finances. When he worked for Longmont Ford, he would just bring Shanann his paycheck. With regards to Watts calling the school, remember that? Calling the school the morning after the murders, he was freaking out about what he had just done. It was stupid to call the school or Ann Meadows. It made sense that they were suspicious about him because he probably sounded eccentric on the phone. So there's a couple open ends that I want to mention here that kind of just came forward to me. The first thing is that it still brings up the thing of which female called the school that morning. And I still think it was Shanann's mother, because it could be that, you know, my sense is that, or it could have even been Nicole Atkinson. I mean, I think the thing is that we do not know yet. And if you notice, that wasn't brought up in this interview. So the question becomes, you know, why were they there? Well, supposedly there's about an hour missing from the interview that we don't know about. Now, I cannot verify that. Please don't quote me. That's my little conspiracy thing. But I don't think, based on what we've seen here, that this is really a guy playing with a full deck. I think it's more like he's wanting to tell his side of the story. And the other real thing I got from him is how, like, seriously, how much he's kind of relaxed in prison. And just saying, you know, I'm looking outside and I'm thinking, gee, I wonder what I would be doing with my kids today. Okay. So in kind of a summation, there's another thing that I wanted to say. I have a friend who does face reading, and she's in Scotland. She's one of the better ones out there. So she has agreed to do that with me and take a look at Chris's face, which I'm interested in. So I'm going to try and nab her to get that done. In the meantime, everyone, I hope you're having a really blessed day. And one of the things I want to say, there's a couple things that I want to wrap up with. Number one, just because I say, oh, that's sad, or that's, you know, what have you about Chris, I'm not condoning what he did. I'm still in shock. If I could say to all of you the truth, which I will, it really is that I'm in shock and I have no words right now, which if you knew me, that's kind of surprising. So I just want to say that I'm going to finish up this other section. I'd like to do some of that face reading stuff, and that will be probably in the coming videos. I would like to move back to a couple other cases, which I will. In the meantime, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't, you know what to do. And please follow me here, because that's the way. And if you want to know when I'm on or when something has been uploaded, once you subscribe, then there's a little bell up there. You just hit that bell, and that means that you will get notifications when something has been uploaded. And I hope you have a very blessed day. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you next time. Please below, put your comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of this. But please remember, say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. Be kind to each other. And by the way, please don't attack me. I'm kind of not really into it, so you will be removed if you behave that way. So I will see you again on the next one. Thank you, everybody.